Hi everybody, it's Ryan Estriato again, and I am the author of the K-12 Educator's Data Guidebook, Reimagining Practical Data Use in Schools. Today we'll be talking about Chapter 10 of the K-12 Educator's Data Guidebook, which is called Practical is Personal. And like some of the other videos on my channel, this is part of a virtual book club that I'm doing. If this is your first time doing a virtual book club for the K-12 Educator's Data Guidebook, check out my other videos, especially Chapter 3, where I talk a little bit about the structure of the book club. You can find that link in the notes below. The Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "If you don't know which port you're sailing to, then no wind is favorable." I love this quote because it describes perfectly what I think we can all do to make our data use more practical, which is a very personal thing. Okay, so let's break that analogy down. The winds in Seneca's quote are your data, and the ports in Seneca's quote are your job duties. And if those two things are not connected, then you can have all the data in the world, but it's going to guide you in all kinds of different ways. And if you're lucky, it'll help you in your work. But I want to make the argument in this video that we can be a lot more intentional about that in very personal and practical ways. The first way that we're going to talk about that is to think about three elements that connect in your work and your data use. Those three elements are, number one, your job duties. Number two, the important decisions that you have to make in order to accomplish those job duties. And then number three, the information that you have outside of your head, your data, that tells you how you're doing on those decisions and helps you make the best possible version of those decisions you can. So once again, those are your job duties, your important decisions, and then your data. All right, let's break that down one by one. Number one, job duties. So what are job duties? Well, it might seem obvious to you, but when was the last time you went into your job description and you examined what exactly you were being asked to do in this larger system of serving kids? It's helpful here to get really clear about what these are. If you're a school psychologist, it might have something to do with meeting your timelines to conduct equitable evaluations for students that we think might have learning disabilities. If you're a school principal, it might be developing and leading the strategy that will help your school community meet their academic and social needs. If you're a teacher, it might be developing standards-based lessons and then using them in the classroom to help students reach their academic and social potential. And of course, there are so many other important jobs that are included in making school work for kids. So the question for you is, what is your part in that? What does your job duty statement ask you to do in your actual real life experience? What are those responsibilities? Let's get really clear on that. Okay, second part, important decisions. When you are really focused on the job duties that we talked about in part one, what are all the decisions that you have to make daily and weekly that help you get those job duties done? As a school psychologist, it might be reaching all of the students who need you the most on any given day and being really intentional about figuring out who that is. As a school principal, it might be looking at how well your strategy speaks to your community of educators and families and students. Or it might even be something more tactical, like during your day, how much time should you be spending in classrooms observing, in your office planning, or out on the playground getting to know and connecting with the kids? There are only so many examples that I can give because practical is personal. You'll get the most out of your practical data use if you do your own analysis on what your job duties and decisions are like. Okay, and finally, the third part, the data that informs those decisions. When you are making your decisions well, what does the information outside of your head, so the data, show you? Are there related questions? What are the data sources that inform those decisions? When you make those decisions well or poorly, what do the quantitative and qualitative data that surrounds you tend to show you? More examples. If you are a school psychologist and your goal is to efficiently organize your evaluations, you may have a data source that is a spreadsheet of all the students that you have to evaluate, their due dates, and some assignment of priority. And when you're making those decisions well about who to evaluate, you might have a column in that spreadsheet that shows which evaluations are coming up soon. You may have very few and hopefully zero overdue evaluations, and maybe another column that has a little bit of subjective feedback from the staff that are also supporting your students to let you know about what the level of priority might be. If you are a school principal, a quick show of hands at a staff meeting about how well the staff are understanding the bigger picture and the strategy for connecting with the community could give you a lot of information. Similarly, summaries of end-of-week quiz scores and other formative assessments can give you some clues about whether or not the plan that you tried that week with the teachers is having a positive effect. And for teachers, on a daily or weekly basis, informal assessments like exit tickets or online quiz results could give you a lot of clues about whether or not your plan is working or inform the plan that you want to try the next day. Again, those examples may or may not connect with you, but hopefully they give you a sense about how practical and tactical and also personal this type of thinking should be in order for you to feel like your job duties, the important decisions that you make, and the data related to that are all aligned in a way that is working for you. One of the things that can be really hard about this is thinking about what an actual data source is that you should be looking at. So it might be worthwhile to look at some examples of that. I'm just going to throw out a bunch of ideas off the top of my head that you can look at and then make some decisions about how well those data sources align with your important decisions and also your job duties. Let's start with some real common ones that you've probably also thought of. Assessment scores, mostly formative because they come more often, but maybe some of the summative ones also that come quarterly or at the end of the year. These could be formal, like standardized testing. They could be what I think of as medium formal, like quizzes for online software that can be aggregated across an entire classroom or grade level. They can be really informal, like exit tickets. The point is, this is information that acts as a test for you about how well your plan is going and about what you should be thinking about for the next day. Other sources of data might be what I think of as community level data. So surveys, whether that be of students, families, the surrounding community, or staff. Interviews is a qualitative source of data. What are the key words and topics that come up if you take a sample of opinions from the people who are influenced and affected by your work? And then some of the things I've really learned to look at and enjoy as personal and practical sources of data, assuming that they connect well to my goals, are what I think of as organizational data. What does my calendar tell me? What do my spreadsheets that I use to track my evaluations tell me? What do my performance evaluations over a number of years tell me? The answer is they probably tell you a lot, maybe even an overwhelming amount. And so if we go back to our mental model of connecting our job duties, our decisions, and our data, you can narrow down what is important to know from any of those sources of information. But the key is, number one, get super clear about what your job duties and responsibilities are. And then number two, get super clear about the decisions that you have to make really well in order to meet those goals. Okay, so the last point that I want to make about this is an evolving process. Every version of this that you try is a hypothesis that you are testing for yourself. And I think that's really important to call out because as educators, we often want to get everything right the first time. And if we can do that, then we should. But in my own personal experience, that's rarely the case. The way that I operate in general and the way that I use data in particular needs to be adapted to the situation that I'm in and the job responsibilities that I carry in this larger system of how we serve students. And so I want to give you permission to take this as a constantly evolving process. Take every personal decision that you make about how you use your data as an experiment that you go back and kindly and safely evaluate for yourself how well that worked. Keep the techniques that are working really well and serving your students and supporting your job duties for them, and then improve the ones that aren't working out so well. I'll share one example from Chapter 10 of the K-12 Educator's Data Guidebook, and it is a hypothetical about a teacher named Aaron. And in the book, I ask you to imagine that Aaron wants his students to be able to articulate the goals of the daily lessons that they engage. Also in the example is that Aaron's professional intuition tells him that he's got to change his approach. So Aaron's first evolution in his thinking about how to make data practical goes something like this. I reviewed my exit tickets and about a quarter of the students could not name the purpose of the lesson. I'll reteach tomorrow. In the book, I suggest a more curious approach that Aaron can take to improve the way he figures out what is going to be the most effective, personal, and practical use of the data he has available to him. Try this one instead. I reviewed my exit tickets and about a quarter of the students could not name the purpose of the lesson. One reason for that might be that I didn't express the purpose clearly enough. Another reason might be that I didn't express the purpose enough times. I wonder if using a visual might help, and if that doesn't work, I can try again, but with a smaller group. What I want to point out here is the curious tone that Aaron takes with his own process. It's a tone that will help him learn and decrease the amount of frustration he has as he learns to figure out to connect his job duties, decision, and data points. In that second example, note how Aaron has a number of different curiosities that he wants to pursue. Also note that these come from his professional intuition. And last, note that Aaron has a number of different things that he can try. So as he discovers through his results what's working and what's not, he has other things that he can try out that will eventually make his situation more practical and connected to the result that he wants for his students. Okay, so that's all for this video. Today we talked about two main concepts from Chapter 10 of the K-12 Educator's Data Guidebook. The first is, how do we make data more practical by connecting our job duties, our decisions, and the related data points? And then the second thing that we talked about was, how do we take a curious and experimental approach and tone to the way that we do this so that we create the maximum opportunities for us to learn as professionals? A quick reflection before we go. What about the content today in this video resonated with you and inspired you? Second reflection, what challenged you and what do you want to push back at to help you learn and develop your own take on this? Third question, what do you need to know more about to develop an opinion or take a stance on what it is that we talked about today? And finally, what is the first actionable step that you can take tomorrow in your job to get you one step closer to where you want to be with making your job duties, decisions, and data points more aligned and connected in your education job? That's all for now. I'm Ryan Estriato, the author of the K-12 Educator's Data Guidebook, and I'll see you in the virtual book club chat. Talk to you later.